Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you about Sledgehammer Games potentially censoring swastikas and other Nazi imagery from Call of Duty WWII. Doing a little bit of revisionist history, or perhaps making it politically correct, we're unsure, but there is some evidence for that and I wanted to talk about it. A quick heads up though, unrelated to this video, I'm actually going to be doing a fan meetup in San Francisco this Saturday at a Microsoft store. It's a sponsored deal for an Oculus Rift tournament. There's a link down there in the description. And yes, I'm playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2 instead of a more boots on the ground one. I think I just really enjoy playing this game. But if you watch the reveal trailer for Call of Duty WWII, one of the things that you may have noticed was missing was swastikas and other Nazi stuff. There just wasn't hardly any of it, which is rare and unusual for a World War II game, because that's obviously the enemies that you're going to be fighting. As a matter of fact, when I think about it, I can't remember seeing a single swastika or any skull or anything like that, and there's some evidence that they've been removed thanks to Reddit user u/Thermix, who is linked down there below in the description. He has an image of this good old MG42 machine gun with a Wehrmacht stamp on it, when that really probably would have been SS. And then there is the leaked zombie stuff about the special paranormal missions, and they have the German stamp on it, but it's most notably missing the swastika. It's got something else going on instead, and I found that to be mighty suspicious, which does give some evidence that they're being removed. Now, there's two non-gamer groups that will immediately be mad about this. Number one is neo-Nazis, well, for obvious reasons. Number two is for historians, and there are gamers who really do enjoy a historical experience, and they feel that this lack of Nazi imagery, especially considering that it's such an important part of the war, would lead to an inauthentic experience. There are other people that view this as a sort of revisionist history, or they're concerned that censoring these images and removing offensive things were done simply just to be politically correct. I don't personally believe that, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. But it's roughly analogous to removing Huckleberry Finn from history classes or literature classes over excessive use of the N-word. While it may not be pleasant now, and while it may trigger some people, it is historically accurate, and learning about these things in the context of their own environment is very important. And in another sense, it's literally World War II, the ultimate good versus evil battle in human history, the Nazis versus everybody else. And the Nazis are kind of the ultimate bad guys. I mean, maybe even for all time now, because for the last 70 years, the villains in almost every movie are in some way modeled after Nazis. I don't know why we would be trying to make them nicer. So I'm going to put all that aside, and I'm going to put on my analyst hat and take a much closer look at this. In a different view, lots of Nazi stuff for the reveal is probably not a good idea, because the game focuses very heavily on Allied forces and their stories. I'm going to guess it'll be mostly American, but they do travel through Europe and meet the rest of the Allies. It's their story, it's their brotherhood, it's the story of loss and sacrifice and how brutal the war was and how much they gave up to fight this great evil, and it's a narrative sort of thing. I don't even hear Condrey or Schofield or any of the other people or any of the trailers or interviews mentioning Axis characters of any kind. I have not heard one single mention of an actual central bad guy, of an Axis character, an Axis voice actor, anything like that, because I don't think that they interact with them too much. I'm going on a guess here, but I'm going to guess that the Allies mostly just kill them, and they show up kind of as bad guys. And in this sense, the villains aren't the focus of the reveal, and that's a smart thing, because you don't want to focus the reveal solely on the villains. Now, there are some series and movies where the villains can kind of make it happen, like an awesome villain can really drive the sales and interest, but this is not one of those times, I believe. Secondly, and most importantly in this entire video, you got to keep in mind this was a global reveal for Call of Duty, which means it needed to conform not only to local laws in the United Kingdom and not just to US laws, which many of us here, myself included, often forget are not the same around the world, but they have to conform to dozens of different countries that have various rules on freedom of speech and Nazi imagery. Most notably, Germany has the swastikas and all this Nazi stuff completely banned, or at least very, very restricted. Now, in Germany, after World War II, they had their freedoms restored, and they're roughly like we are with freedom of speech and freedom of movement, religion, all that sort of thing. But they are very, very restrictive on Nazi flags, on swastikas, on Nazi imagery, on a lot of the old war stuff, and it was to bust up neo-Nazi groups, because you don't want them running rampant. So in Germany, it is very, very illegal to have, or especially to show, any Nazi flags or imagery, with the exception of a few historical or educational purposes. Now, you would say, this is a historical video game about World War II, but even video games and movies based on World War II are not exempt from this law, or are very rarely exempt from this law. It is very difficult to get an exemption to have a piece of art with Nazi stuff in it, even to the point where they had a constitutional case recently about a guy throwing a swastika in a trash can, and this, of all things, this was considered potentially against the law because it still had a swastika in it, even though we're throwing it in the garbage. And Call of Duty is no exception. Video games in Germany are heavily edited. They often have green blood or no blood, and the Nazi stuff is taken out. So I think it is very likely that Activision decided to clean up this reveal and have no swastikas and no Nazi stuff so that it conforms to German law, because believe it or not, there are a ton of German Call of Duty fans. Like, it's actually pretty popular in that country, and it has to conform to several other nations' broadcast rules that are a little bit more restrictive. So they probably cleaned it up for the reveal for that purpose, to get the reveal spread as far and as wide as possible, and to not offend any of these countries and to not run into any sort of weird legal issues with them. And I think that it is very likely that when the game comes out in Germany, it will probably be blood and swastika free, but play roughly the same. I do not personally believe, nor do I believe there's evidence to support there's any sort of crazy political purpose behind this, that they're being politically correct, or far left or far right, or they're trying to do something strange with ideologies, because even in the most restrictive of free speech ideologies, they generally allow the use of Nazis as example of bad guys, because as we said earlier, they're kind of the bad guys for the world now. On top of that, there's not very much evidence that the swastikas and the Nazis and the bad guys have been removed from the game, except for a little bit of marketing material, which, as I said, has been purposefully cleaned for international release. I would find it absurd, and I think that Sledgehammer would get slammed super hard by global press if they did a Call of Duty game with no swastikas and no Nazis and no bad guys. I think we're probably just saving that little bit of nastiness for closer to release, though I do have a few personal concerns about it, because I know we're going to be playing Axis versus Allies online, so you know there's going to be a lot of people about Jew slaying jokes, and if there's a flamethrower, we're going to make our Jew burning jokes and our very inappropriate South Park-esque kind of stuff, and there's going to be wildly inappropriate stuff while we play this game. Political jokes abound as well, in that, like, look at me, I'm on Team Trump, I'm a Nazi. Look at me, I'm an anti-FA, I'm a Nazi, herpa-derpa-derpa-derp. But the way we fight this is not by complaining about it. Instead, we fight fear and ignorance with love and education. You just gotta be patient, gotta educate some people, and stick with it, and the world will change with you. Guys, that is all for this short video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.